Hola, ¿cómo estás? How's it going? My name is Wes. Welcome back to another vocabulary lesson. In today's lesson, lesson number 34, we are going to have a look at part 3 out of 4 of our food and drinks vocabulary lesson. And in the previous two parts, we already looked at some of the most popular drinks, foods, and we also learned the 4 main meals of the day, which were the breakfast,
el desayuno,
the lunch,
el almuerzo,
the midday snack,
la merienda,
and then also dinner.
la cena.
So in today's lesson, I want to take a look at some of the most popular fruits and also some herbs, spices, and oils. So without further ado, let's get into today's lesson. Alright, so the first word of the day is the apple, which in Spanish is la manzana.
La manzana. La manzana.
Then the banana in Spanish is el plátano. El plátano. Notice the accent on the A here.
El plátano. El plátano.
Now, in some Spanish countries, you can also say la banana, which also means the banana. But the official word, I guess, in Spanish for the banana is el plátano.
El plátano. La banana.
Then the orange is la naranja.
La naranja. La naranja.
The orange. Notice the pronunciation here, so that J turns into almost like a G sound. La naranja. The orange. And orange as a color, just like in English you can say the orange when you mean the fruit, but you can also say the color orange. In Spanish you also have this. So la naranja is the orange, but the color naranja also means orange. And of course, as you probably already expect, we also have a separate lesson about the colors in Spanish. So more about that in a later lesson. Alright, then the next word is the watermelon.
La sandía. La sandía.
And then the grapes in Spanish is las uvas.
Las uvas. Las uvas.
And a grape, so just one a grape, would be una uva.
Una uva. Una uva.
Alright, so those are all fruits in Spanish. Now, the fruit, the word the fruit itself in Spanish is
la fruta. La fruta.
And then if we want to turn that into plural, so instead of the fruit, we want to say the fruits, we simply add two S's, one after la and one after fruta. So la fruta becomes las frutas, the fruits.
Las frutas. Las frutas.
Alright, and then of course, because we are now talking about the fruits, we also want to have a look at the vegetables. So the vegetables in Spanish is
las verduras. Las verduras.
The vegetables. And now we can dive a bit deeper into all of the different vegetables in Spanish. However, I'm not going to do that in this lesson. So instead, we're just going to look at some of the different seasonings, for example. So the pepper, the salt, and also olive oil and those sort of things. So the pepper, when we speak about seasoning, in Spanish is la pimienta.
La pimienta. La pimienta.
But the pepper, when we say the pepper, we can also mean the vegetable, the pepper. And this, the pepper as vegetable in Spanish is el pimiento.
El pimiento. El pimiento.
So la pimienta is the pepper when we talk about seasoning, so the salt and the pepper. And el pimiento is a pepper when we talk about a vegetable.
La pimienta. El pimiento.
Alright, so now that we know the different types of peppers, let's also look at the salt. So the salt in Spanish is la sal. And we already learned this one, I think.
La sal. La sal.
And then the sugar.
El azúcar. El azúcar.
And then the three last words of this lesson, the oil.
El aceite. El aceite.
So for example, el aceite de oliva, which is the olive oil. So literally translated, the oil of the olive. In English, we would say the olive oil.
El aceite de oliva. El aceite de oliva.
And then, for example, in Spain, olive oil is a very popular ingredient that's being used to cook with or prepare dishes with. But in some countries, butter is actually a more popular alternative to using oil. So the butter in Spanish is la mantequilla.
La mantequilla. La mantequilla.
The butter. Double L at the end, so that turns into a J sound. Mantequilla. The butter. And then the last word of today's lesson is the spices. The spices.
Las especias. Las especias.
Alright, and that's it for today's vocabulary lesson. Now, as always, what I recommend you to do is to learn these different words by using the technique that I like to use, which is flashcards or any technique that works for you. From now on, what I think is important to mention is that I don't necessarily recommend you to watch every single blue vocabulary lesson, because there will be some topics that might not be very relevant for you. So for example, there's a separate blue vocabulary lesson which is called going to school. But if you're not going to school anymore, then you don't necessarily need to learn that whole vocabulary list. So from now on, anytime you see a blue lesson, think about if you would want to learn it, yes or no. Of course, it never hurts to actually learn all the vocabulary that you're being taught in this course. But at the same time, I also understand that you most likely value your time and your energy. And so I could imagine that there are some things that you don't want to necessarily learn. So if you feel like you don't want to, by all means, don't learn it and just skip to the next lesson. Again, for any information, you can always go to my website, SpanishWithWes.com. That's it for today's lesson. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in the next one. Adios.